Hello students, let's talk more about our first chapter, that is the story of village Palampur. I am Shalini and I am going to discuss about migration of worker, current scenario of migration and reasons for migration. Now first of all, let's understand what is migration or whom do we call a migrant worker. Simple. A migrant worker is a person who either migrates, who moves within their home country or outside it to pursue work. So simple, migration is the movement of people from their native place to some new place in search of better work, better income, you can say, or better standard of living as a whole. Now let's see in our NCERT book, this is the small description that we have about the migration of workers. Let's see. Gosaipur and Majoli are two villages in North Bihar. Out of a total of 850 households in the two villages, there are more than 250 men who are employed in rural Punjab and Haryana or in Delhi, Mumbai, Surat, Hyderabad, or Nagpur. Such migration is common in most villages across India. Now, let's see why we have taken the example of Bihar over here. There are so many states in India, but why only Bihar? Actually, when we talk about migration of workers, Bihar and UP are actually the major corridors for migration of workers. That is, maximum number of people actually flow, or you can say move from these places to some new places in search of work. And if we talk about India, migration is a fundamental right that we have got from our constitution, isn't it? If you remember the right to freedom that we have, it is one of the fundamental rights that we talk about. And according to this right to freedom, Indians are allowed to travel, work, and reside in any part of the country. So, whatever category you belong to, every citizen is having complete right to go wherever they want to settle themselves in search of better income, better standard of living. And when we talk about India, migration, you can say, is a way of life because maximum people are earning, even you can say the entire country's economy is running because of these migrant workers that is there. Now let's see, move ahead. When we talk about migration of workers, you can see from this diagram how picture, that is how this person is carrying not only the household items but also even his kid to some new place, to some urban area. So you can just imagine how people are taking their household items, their entire small setup is done by them in some new area just because they don't have source of income at their native place. So they want to have a better life and they move to these urban areas in search of that better standard of living. Now let's see, this is the latest news that we have about migration, and I'm talking about 2020. Right now we are already having this pandemic, and let's see, this is the latest news that I am having just 2 or 3 days back. It is of the Hindu. You can see from here, that is coronavirus lockdown. India's first Shramik special train carrying 1200 migrants reaches Ranchi. Now if you actually look at the newspapers, not newspapers exactly, if you look at the websites, you will find that there are a lot of news about migrants because they all are just eagerly waiting or trying to get back to their native place because right now their source of income is stopped because of this pandemic and they just want to go back to their home. Not only they, even the states where they are working, those state governments also want that they should go back to their home because right now they are like a burden to that state because having proper facility for them, proper food facility, proper health facility for them is actually a financial pressure for the state governments where these migrants are working right now. So this is the news that we are having for our migration of workers. although our NCERT is having a very little portion for this migrant, but I consider this topic as very important because just because of this pandemic that we are having right now, migration, the situation of the migrant workers has become visible to the mainstream India. That is, now the entire Indians are looking at the problems that these migrant workers actually face, and we don't have a proper policy for that. Now let's move ahead. See, we can have, this is the news that we have. Now let's move ahead. Again, you can see a picture where people are waiting for the public transport which will be taking them to their home place. Now moving ahead, 2020 migration getting visible. That is, till now we were not focusing on what to do. Even we were not at all worried about these migrants because they were doing their whatever work they have, so they were doing that work, and the state governments were least bothered about them. But just because of this pandemic and the way they are protesting and they are getting crowded at a single place of all these public transport, things are getting visible to the entire India right now. Let's see again a picture to show the real status of these migrants all over India, not only in Kerala or not only in Punjab, but in the entire India. You will find the same situation because every state is having so many migrants over there. Now let's see. You can see internal migration according to the census 2001 report. Now let's see what are the reports saying. It is saying that there are 307 million persons migrated by place of birth. So now just see the data that we have for our migrant workers. It's not 1 crore, it's not 10 crore, not 1 million. We are having 307 million people who have migrated from their place of birth. That is, if I am born at place A and I have gone to place B for some reasons, then there are around 307 million such people who have migrated from their place of birth. And if we talk about their last resident, we have, this data has got increment. Now let's see, there are 314 million persons who have migrated by last last residence in India. So this is the data that is showing that what huge number of people are not actually living in their native place. So you can say that the entire country is running because of these people. They are doing work and the country is progressing. Now let's see one more thing, students, before I am explaining further. It should be clear that when I am calling migrants, I am not only talking about semi-skilled or unskilled workers of India. I am also referring to the skilled persons of India who actually go to some other places from their native place for better lifestyle, for better income, and these are generally educated and rich sections of our society, whom you will find that they are getting settled in the, you can say, so called metro cities of our country. Now this is again data that is taken from census 2001, which is reflecting huge number of migrants in our country. Just a short view at this large data that we are having. Now moving ahead, let's see the types of migration that we have. If we talk about migration, we have international migration and internal migration. Very simple. That is, when we talk about international, if a person is moving out of his country, that movement will be considered as international migration. If it is done, if that movement of people is done within the country, then it is internal migration. Again, internal can be intrastate migration or interstate migration. When I talk about intrastate, that is within a state. If there is movement of people in search of work, for pursuing work, or for getting settled, so that is your intrastate. For example, if I am talking about Bihar, and if suppose, for example, if a person from Gaya is coming to Patna for work, then that is an example for intrastate migration. Now coming to your interstate migration, simple, that is movement of people between two states of India, that is your interstate migration. For example, if a person in UP, if that person is settling in Delhi, then that is an example for interstate, that is movement between two states. So these are the two types of migration that we have basically. Now let's move ahead. Migration of workers, again a short, you can say, features of these migration. They move to pursue work. They may or may not settle, stay permanently where they work. Simple. These migrants, they usually do not have the intention to stay permanently in the region in which they work, but there are migrants who move for work permanently, and they are basically from educated and more privileged groups. Now, when we talk about the internal migrants, they are basically belonging to socially or economically disadvantaged groups, like you can say Adivasis, Dalits, or any religious communities. Coming to the second point, migrants play a very important role in economy. Actually, if these migrants are not there in any state, it means that state will not be able to function properly and will not be able to get maximum production whatever they are getting. Now let me explain this. When I am saying that it is an important, plays an important role, actually these migrants make the city run. You can see from here this picture that is showing how these migrant workers help the city run and take the status of economic growth upward. Now, how this is happening? Actually, the entire village economy depends on whatever income is given by these migrants to the family. So you can say not only the city is running because of them, even the village economy is also dependent on the money that is earned by these migrants. And there are, if for example, there are around 3.5 million people in Kerala who are actually not from Kerala and they have come to Kerala for work. Just imagine, 3.5 million migrants are there. And suppose, for example, if they go back to their home, these 3.5 million, if they go back to their home, how will the construction sector survive? Or not only construction sector, whatever, in wherever field they are working, how will that sector survive, function? They can't function. So you can say that the entire economy is running because of these migrants, not only the village but also your urban areas also where they are going to work. Now coming to the third point, that is most migrants have poor access to social welfare measures. Now this is some irony, you can say. They are working for the development purpose, they are developing the cities, you can say the entire country, but they are not getting social welfare benefits. For example, whatever you can say, the privileges that is given for the local people in terms of healthcare facilities, or in the terms of fair priced food or training, education, or maybe decent shelter, all these basic entitlements are not provided to these migrants, because both the state governments where they belong to and where they are working, both the state governments are in mess, that who is going to provide or who is going to simple finance their all these basic facilities. So these migrant workers are short of, are not provided with proper social welfare benefits. Now that is an irony. Let's move ahead with what do we have more. Let's see. Seasonal migration for work is a reality in rural India. Actually, if we talk about our rural India, where people are basically dependent on agriculture and allied sector, we find that this sector is having work only for a short period of time. So, what will happen? Obviously, people will migrate from that place to some urban area or to towns for some source of income. So, that is a reality in India. Now, let's talk about our major migration corridor, that is UP and Bihar have been known for rural migration for decades. and what are the new corridors, that is the new states from where huge number of people are getting migrated nowadays. It is Odisha, MP, Rajasthan, and the northeast. Now, you know something, right now during this pandemic time, this Bihar government, which is having so huge number of migrants which will be returning to this state in few days, they are giving rupees 1000 financial assistance to each and every migrants. Not a very huge amount, but a good, you can say, step by the Bihar government, because the number is very large. So this is just a short description of the major migration corridors that we have in India. Now let's see ahead. This is again, let's see how they are actually trying to go back to their home, and this is how they are returning. Reasons for migration, a very important point that we have from this section of this chapter, that is why do people migrate? If that is the question, this is the answer that we have. That is, let's start from the first point, that is we have poverty. People are poor, they want more income, so they are moving. Better education, that is obviously in rural areas we don't have proper educational facilities. We have basically primary schools are set up for elementary education, and that too why? Because we have right to education that has been provided by the constitution. So the government has to set up some primary schools and high schools. So we don't have proper, you can say, better educational facilities in our rural areas and small towns, so people move. For better health facilities also they move. A place which is having high population density, people move from that place to some low population density area to have better environment in terms of pollution, in terms of the way people live. Because of marriage also, people also migrate. This point is basically for females who get shifted to some new place just because they have been married. So these are few points. Coming to the next is your shortage of rainfall. If a person is dependent on rainfall for doing farming, and if because of the climatic change that has actually happened and that has reduced the amount of rainfall, now you will find that people have started moving out of their villages and in search of some other job options. And the last is your availability of work, that is people in search of job, they actually migrate. This is the most common reason, cause for migration of workers in any part of our country. So students, I hope till now the things are very clear. Now internal migration is neglected in India. It is not a policy priority, but still the government has set up this Interstate Migrant Workers Act 1979 to safeguard the interest of these migrant workers in India. And why don't we have a proper policy, and it is not getting enacted properly? Because we don't have the real data that we have. The data is still missing. The exact number of migrants is still not proper, and migrants are getting missed out in BPL surveys just because we don't have the exact data of these migrants. These people are missing out in the below poverty line surveys. So I hope students, everything is quite clear about migration of workers. Thank you so much.